They thought I'd stay silent, keep my head down like the obedient cog they'd trained me to be. But when a man believes his company's $900,000 tax loophole is a secret he'll take to his grave, he forgets one crucial thing: every secret has an expiration date, and I'm the one holding the timer. They handed him my promotion on a silver platter, called it strategic thinking, when he couldn't even spell depreciation without autocorrect. Now I'm about to show them what real strategy looks like. My name is Melissa Grant, and I've spent 12 years climbing the ladder at Harbor Point Solutions, one rung at a time, each step calculated and earned. At 36, I knew every line item in our financial statements better than I knew my own reflection. That Tuesday morning in March, I walked into the quarterly review meeting at 9:30 sharp, my presentation folder pristine, my future seemingly secured. The boardroom smelled like fresh coffee and false promises. I'd rehearsed my talking points for the deputy CFO position, focusing on tax strategy until they flowed like water. Martin Blake, our CFO, had all but guaranteed it was mine. "Just a formality, Melissa," he'd said last week, that practiced smile never quite reaching his eyes. I took my usual seat, 3 chairs down from the head of the table, and watched the room fill. Then Evan McCoy strutted in, all 31 years of him wrapped in a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. 8 months. He'd been here 8 goddamn months, and half that time he'd spent asking me questions so basic I'd wondered if he'd bought his MBA from a diploma mill. "Before we dive into the quarterly numbers," Martin began, his voice carrying that particular tone executives use when they're about to detonate someone's career, "I want to announce a structural change in our finance department." My fingers found the edge of my folder, pressing until the cardboard bent. "Evan McCoy will be taking on the role of Deputy CFO for tax strategy, effective immediately." The words hung in the air like smoke from a fired gun. Around the table, eyes darted between Evan's barely suppressed grin and my frozen expression. I felt my face rearrange itself into something professionally neutral, while my mind screamed obscenities in 3 languages. "Melissa," Martin continued, and now he was looking directly at me with the kind of pity reserved for roadkill, "will continue in her crucial role as financial supervisor, providing the stability and institutional knowledge that makes our department run so smoothly." Stability, institutional knowledge. Corporate speak for "thanks for training your replacement. Now get back in your box." Evan stood up, buttoning his jacket with the confidence of someone who'd never had to earn anything. "I'm thrilled for this opportunity," he said, his voice carrying that particular prep school polish that opened doors before he even knocked. "I look forward to implementing some fresh, dynamic strategies to optimize our tax position." Fresh, dynamic. 2 weeks ago, this man had asked me to explain the difference between a tax credit and a tax deduction. I'd spent an hour walking him through concepts any first-year accounting student could recite in their sleep. He'd taken notes on his phone, occasionally glancing up to flash that country club smile. "Congratulations, Evan," I heard myself say, my voice steady as a flat line. "I'm sure you'll bring interesting perspectives to the role." The meeting continued. Quarterly projections, revenue streams, operational costs, numbers flowing past me like traffic while I sat there. A smile welded to my face. Jennifer from HR kept shooting me sympathetic glances. Tom from operations looked uncomfortable. Even the intern by the door seemed to sense the injustice of it, her eyes wide with secondhand indignation. But it was Evan's expression that burned itself into my memory. Not quite gloating, but close. The look of someone who'd won a race by starting at the finish line. After the meeting, Martin cornered me by the elevator. "Melissa, I want you to know how much we value your contributions." "Of course," I cut him off, my smile sharp enough to draw blood. "I understand completely. Evan brings certain connections that will benefit the company," he continued, apparently needing to twist the knife. His relationship with the board, particularly through his golf partnership with Richard Brennan, our CEO, golf partnership. I almost laughed. "I'm sure those connections will prove invaluable," I said, stepping into the elevator, "especially when it comes to understanding tax law." The doors closed on Martin's uncertain expression. In the metallic reflection, I saw my own face calm, controlled, giving nothing away. But behind my eyes, something had shifted. They'd made their choice. They'd chosen connections over competence, handicap scores over hard work. As the elevator descended, I thought about Evan's confident speech about fresh strategies and optimization. He had no idea what he was playing with. Tax law wasn't golf. You couldn't improve your game by buying better clubs or knowing the right people. It was a minefield where one wrong step could cost millions. And I knew exactly where he was about to step. The next 3 weeks taught me what invisibility felt like. Meeting invitations that once flooded my inbox dried up to a trickle. The weekly tax strategy sessions I'd led for 5 years, suddenly restructured with Evan at the helm. I watched from my desk as he walked past with Martin and 2 external consultants, heading to conference room A, the one with the frosted glass doors and the 60-inch display I'd specifically requested for complex spreadsheet reviews. But invisibility has its advantages. People forget you're there. They talk louder, laugh carelessly, leave documents on printers a second too long. It started at the coffee station on a Thursday afternoon. Evan was holding court with 2 junior analysts, his voice carrying that particular tone men use when they think they're being impressive. "The beauty of it," he was saying, stirring sugar into his espresso, "is that we're talking about nearly $1 million in tax savings, 900,000 to be precise, all completely legal, just requires creative interpretation of interstate commerce exemptions." One of the analysts, Derek, fresh from Northwestern, looked skeptical. "That seems like a lot. Has legal reviewed it?" Evan's laugh was pure country club confidence. "Legal doesn't need to review everything. Sometimes you have to move fast, be agile. That's what Richard brought me in for, to shake things up. Stop playing it so safe." I stood by the microwave, reheating my lunch, invisible in my ordinariness. 900,000. Interstate commerce exemptions. The pieces were already forming a picture in my mind, and it wasn't pretty. That evening, I stayed late. Not unusual, I'd always been last to leave, but now I had purpose beyond finishing reports. I pulled up our tax filings from the last quarter, cross-referenced them with our interstate shipping logs. The pattern emerged like a photograph in developer fluid. They were reclassifying domestic transfers as interstate commerce to claim exemptions meant for genuine cross-border trade. It was clever, I'd give them that. Also completely fraudulent. The kind of scheme that worked until it didn't. Until an IRS auditor decided to dig deeper and found the house of cards. I created a new folder on my personal laptop, named it Recipes, boring enough to avoid attention. Inside, I began building my own paper trail. Screenshots of tax documents, shipping manifests, anything that showed the real nature of these transactions. The following Monday, I caught a break. Evan had left his laptop open in the small conference room while he went to lunch. The screen was locked, but a printed email sat beside it, probably meant for Martin. M discussed the optimization strategy with Richard over 18 holes yesterday. He's thrilled with the projected savings. Moving forward as discussed, remember, the fewer people involved, the cleaner this stays. E. I photographed it with my phone, making sure to capture the date stamp and email headers. The fewer people involved line was particularly damning. They knew exactly what they were doing. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a ghost with a purpose. I documented everything. The Tuesday when Evan asked Karen from accounting to recode certain transactions for consistency. The Thursday when Martin personally handled reports that should have gone through the standard review process. The Friday when I heard Evan tell someone on the phone, No paper trail on this. We'll discuss it at the club." The most revealing moment came accidentally. I was working late again, 10:45 p.m. according to the office clock, when I heard voices from Martin's office. The door was cracked, their confidence making them careless. "Melissa's been asking questions about the interstate filings," Martin said. "So," Evan's voice was dismissive. "She's not in the loop anymore. What's she going to do? Complain to HR that she doesn't understand modern tax strategy?" "She understands plenty. That's what worries me." "Then give her busy work. Keep her buried in quarterly reconciliations or something. By the time anyone looks closely at this, we'll have saved the company enough money that the board won't care about the details." I slipped back to my desk, added their conversation to my growing collection. They thought they were so clever, mistaking my silence for submission. But every document they misfiled, every corner they cut, every law they bent, I was there, watching, recording, building. My recipes folder grew fat with evidence. Email chains where they deliberately excluded legal counsel. Spreadsheets with 2 sets of numbers, one for internal use, one for filing. Shipping documents altered after the fact. A beautiful, damning collection that would make any IRS investigator salivate. They'd pushed me aside for a man who thought tax law was a game of golf, play it fast, play it loose, and if you cheat, make sure your partners are doing it too. But they'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't just watching from the sidelines. I was keeping score. The systematic erasure of my presence from Harbor Point's financial leadership happened with corporate efficiency. First, my name disappeared from the department's email distribution lists, the ones that mattered. Anyway, then my desk was relocated from the executive floor to the general workspace. To better facilitate team collaboration, according to the memo from HR, by week 4 of Evan's reign, I might as well have been furniture. Martin called me into his office on a Wednesday morning, 8:15 sharp. His desk was a monument to false achievement photos with politicians. A Stanford MBA prominently displayed, a putting green in the corner that screamed midlife crisis. "Melissa," he began, hands folded like a priest about to deliver bad news. "I want to ensure you're adjusting well to the new structure." "I'm fine, Martin." I kept my voice neutral, professional, just focusing on my core responsibilities. Good. He shifted in his leather chair, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly salary. "I've been thinking perhaps it would be best if you focused on the quarterly reconciliations for now. Let Evan handle the more strategic initiatives." Strategic initiatives, code for the fraud they were orchestrating. "Of course," I replied, though I should mention, I noticed some inconsistencies in the interstate filing classifications. "Evan has it handled," Martin cut me off, his smile tightening. "He's bringing fresh perspectives to our tax strategies. Sometimes, Melissa, being too entrenched in the old ways can blind us to new opportunities. Old ways, like following federal tax law." "I understand completely," I said, standing to leave. "I'll stick to the reconciliations." "That's the spirit. Oh, and Melissa," he called as I reached the door. "Evan mentioned you've been asking questions about his methodologies. I'd appreciate it if you gave him space to work. Too many cooks, you know." I nodded, swallowing the rage that threatened to crack my professional mask. No more questions. The rumors started soon after, little whispers that followed me through the halls like persistent shadows. "Melissa's struggling with the transition. She can't adapt to modern strategies. Too rigid, too by the book." I heard them in the bathroom stalls, the break room, the elevator. Jennifer from HR actually pulled me aside to offer the name of a career transition coach. But the worst part was the pity. Colleagues who'd once sought my expertise now looked at me like I was a cautionary tale. "Poor Melissa," their eyes said. 12 years of dedication, and this is what she gets." They had no idea what I was actually getting. Late one Thursday evening, around 9:30, I overheard Evan on a conference call. His office door was open, arrogance making him careless again. "No, the beauty is that the IRS won't flag it," he was saying. "We're technically moving products between warehouses that happen to be in different states. The fact that they're only 50 miles apart and we're consolidating them immediately, that's just logistics optimization." I pulled out my phone, opened the recording app. Illinois was a one-party consent state. I could record my own conversations legally. "The key," Evan continued, "is keeping the paper trail minimal. Martin and I are the only ones with full visibility. Even the warehouse managers don't know the real purpose of these transfers. Gold, pure gold." The isolation continued. I was excluded from the quarterly planning session for the first time in 5 years. My request to attend a tax law update seminar was denied budget constraints, though Evan had just expensed a 3-day strategy retreat at a resort in Scottsdale. One afternoon, I found a sticky note on my monitor. "Maybe it's time to consider other opportunities. A friend." A friend. I looked around the office, wondering which of my colleagues had decided I needed career advice via post-it note. Everyone was studiously focused on their screens, but I caught Derek, the Northwestern analyst, quickly looking away. That evening, I sat in my car in the parking garage, reviewing my recipes folder, 63 documents, 42 emails, 18 recorded conversations, 3 modified tax filings with before and after comparisons, a forensic accountant's dream, an executive team's nightmare. Martin thought he was protecting his golden boy by pushing me aside. Evan thought I was a bitter has-been, clinging to outdated principles. The entire office thought I was professionally dying, slowly withering away at my segregated desk. They were all wrong. I wasn't withering, I was waiting. Every dismissive comment, every excluded meeting, every pitying glance, they were just adding fuel to the fire that would eventually consume them. They'd created the perfect conditions for their own destruction, an invisible woman with everything to prove and nothing left to lose. I started my car, NPR filling the silence with market updates and political scandals. Another executive somewhere had been caught in fraud. Stock prices tumbling, careers destroyed. The reporter called it a shocking revelation. I smiled, thinking about my recipes folder. When my revelation came, no one would call it shocking. They'd call it inevitable. The only surprise would be that it came from someone they'd forgotten was even there. Someone they'd made invisible. Their worst mistake. The smoking gun arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, disguised as a routine server maintenance notification. It was migrating old emails to a new archive system, and for 6 hours, the usual access restrictions were lifted, a window of opportunity that I'd been waiting for without knowing it existed. I stayed late that night, waiting until the office emptied. By 7:45, even the cleaning crew had finished their rounds. Just me, the hum of servers, and unrestricted access to 18 months of internal communications. What I found exceeded my darkest assumptions. The email chain started innocuously enough, Martin to Evan, dated 6 weeks ago. Per our discussion with Richard, moving forward with the optimization strategy, legal doesn't need to be looped in at this stage. Evan's response was cocky, careless. Agreed. The less oversight, the better. We can always claim ignorance if anyone questions the interstate classifications later. But it was Martin's reply that made my blood run cold. Not ignorance, strategic interpretation. Remember, we're saving the company $900K annually. That buys a lot of forgiveness. I screenshotted everything, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline flooding my system. Then I found the attachment, a spreadsheet titled Project Transit Alpha. My God, they'd actually named their fraud. The spreadsheet was a masterpiece of criminal creativity. 2 sets of books, essentially. Column A showed real transactions, domestic transfers between our Chicago and Milwaukee warehouses. Column B showed the fictional version, interstate commerce qualifying for massive tax exemptions. The formulas were even designed to auto-calculate the savings. At the bottom, a note in Evan's distinctive style. This should pass casual inspection. Anyone wanting to dig deeper would need access to both shipping manifests and financial records, since those are in different departments. A winky face. He'd put a winky face on federal tax fraud. I kept digging. Found an email from Richard Brennan himself. Gentlemen, I trust your discretion with this initiative. The board is expecting significant tax savings this quarter. Don't disappoint. Don't disappoint. Translation, I don't care how you do it. Just get it done. Then I found something that made everything else pale in comparison. An email from our external auditor, Patricia Williams from Thornton & Associates, dated 2 weeks ago. Martin, I have concerns about the interstate commerce classifications in your latest filing. Several transactions appear to be simple inventory transfers being miscategorized. Please provide clarification. Martin's response. Patricia, I understand your concerns. Perhaps we should discuss this over lunch. I believe we can address your questions more efficiently in person. Patricia's follow-up, sent 3 days later. After our discussion, I'm comfortable with the classifications as presented. No further review needed. I knew Patricia. She was thorough, ethical, by the book. There was no way she'd sign off on this unless... I checked our vendor payment records. There it was, a consulting fee of $50,000 paid to Thornton & Associates the day after Patricia's email. $50,000 to look the other way. My hands shook as I saved everything to multiple USB drives. This wasn't just tax fraud anymore. This was conspiracy, bribery, a web of corruption that went all the way to the CEO. I found more. So much more. Communications with the warehouse managers, pressuring them to backdate shipping documents, instructions to the IT department to modify database entries, a message from Evan to his assistant, asking her to shred certain papers and telling her, it's just routine cleanup. The preliminary report I discovered was the crown jewel. It showed the actual tax liability if the scheme was discovered $900,000 in unpaid taxes, plus penalties and interest that would push it well over $1.5 million. Add the bribery charge, the conspiracy to commit fraud, the obstruction of justice from destroying documents. Harbor Point Solutions wouldn't just face fines. People would go to prison. I organized everything into a timeline, a prosecutorial dream that any IRS criminal investigator could follow from inception to execution. Every email, every document, every altered record tagged, dated, and cross-referenced. At 2:15 in the morning, I finally stopped. Not because I'd found everything I was certain there was more, but because I had enough. More than enough. I sat in the dark office, surrounded by empty cubicles and the weight of what I'd uncovered. They'd pushed me out, made me invisible, treated me like a relic who couldn't understand their modern strategies. They'd been so confident, so careless, so certain that their old boys network would protect them. Martin with his Stanford MBA and political photos, Evan with his country club membership and expensive suits, Richard with his CEO title and board connections. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. I locked the USB drives in my desk drawer, the one they'd moved to the common area, the one they thought didn't matter anymore. Tomorrow, I'd transfer everything to my lawyer's office, create backup copies, establish a chain of custody that would hold up in court. But tonight, I sat in the darkness and smiled. They'd made me invisible. Yes, but invisibility, I'd learned, was just another word for invincibility when you knew how to use it. The timer on their secret was running down, and they didn't even know it had started. The art of manipulation is knowing when to appear helpless. Thursday morning, I knocked on Evan's office door with a stack of reconciliation reports and my best defeated expression. Evan, I'm sorry to bother you, I began, letting a hint of exhaustion creep into my voice. I'm having trouble squaring some of these quarterly numbers with the new filing structure. I know you're busy, but... He looked up from his monitor, and I saw it, that flash of superiority, the barely concealed satisfaction of watching me struggle. Still stuck in the old ways, Melissa. I guess so, I replied, allowing my shoulders to slump slightly. These interstate classifications are just... they're sophisticated. I want to make sure I'm not missing something in my reconciliations. The hook was baited, his ego bit hard. It's not that complicated once you understand the strategy, he said, leaning back in his $800 ergonomic chair. Here, let me show you. For the next 40 minutes, Evan walked me through their entire scheme, mistaking my careful questions for confusion, my detailed notes for desperate attempts to keep up. He pulled up spreadsheets, showed me the dual booking system, even explained how they were timing the transfers to maximize the tax benefits. The key, he said, his voice taking on a lecturing tone, is that we're not technically lying, we're just optimizing the truth. Optimizing the truth, I repeated, making sure my phone in my blazer pocket caught every word. That's brilliant. The legal team would probably have a heart attack if they saw this, he laughed. That's why Martin and I handle it directly. Sometimes, Melissa, you have to color outside the lines to create a masterpiece. I nodded, wide-eyed, playing the student to his professor. But what if we get audited? We won't, he said with absolute confidence. Richard has connections at the regional IRS office. We'd get a heads up well in advance. Plenty of time to adjust things. Connections at the IRS. I kept my expression neutral while internally adding another federal crime to the list. You're incredible, I said, injecting just enough admiration into my voice to feed his ego. I had no idea tax strategy could be so creative. He actually preened. It's why Richard brought me in. Fresh blood, fresh ideas. No offense, but the old guard people, like you and the previous team, you were too conservative, too afraid of pushing boundaries. You're right, I agreed, gathering my papers. I've been playing it safe my whole career. Maybe that's why I'm still... I let the sentence trail off, let him fill in the blank with his own assumptions about my stagnation. "Hey," he said, and for a moment, I thought I saw genuine pity in his eyes. "You're good at what you do, the reconciliations, the basic stuff that's important too. Not everyone can be a strategist." I thanked him and left, walking slowly, maintaining the defeated posture until I reached the bathroom. Inside a locked stall, I checked my phone. 43 minutes of crystal clear audio. Every admission, every detail, every arrogant confession. Over the next week, I became Evan's most dedicated student. I brought him coffee. I was getting one anyway, and asked follow-up questions that let him elaborate on his genius. Each conversation was recorded. Each document he showed me photographed when he stepped out. "You know," he told me the following Tuesday, "I'm glad you're finally seeing the bigger picture. Martin was worried you'd be a problem. Maybe go running to legal or something." "Martin worried about me?" I asked, feigning surprise. "Oh yeah, he wanted to fire you actually, after you got passed over for the promotion. Thought you might be vindictive. I told him you were too." He paused, searching for the word. "Conventional for that. Too much of a rule follower." I smiled. "You were right. I wouldn't even know who to tell or what to say." "Exactly," he laughed. "Plus, who would believe you over the CFO and deputy CFO? It would be career suicide. Professional ruin." My mind went to the USB drives locked away in my lawyer's safe, the carefully compiled proof, and the federal prosecutors eager to take on this case. "You're absolutely right," I agreed. The crescendo came Friday afternoon. Evan was heading to his weekly golf game with Richard their standing 3 o'clock tea time and asked me to review some files while he was gone. "I trust you now. Melissa," he said, leaving his computer unlocked. "You've shown you're a team player after all." The moment he left, I photographed his screen, his open emails, the post-it notes around his monitor with passwords and account numbers. One note in particular caught my eye: Patricia TNA 50K approved for Q2. TNA, Thornton & Associates. He'd actually written down the bribe payment on a post-it note. I was photographing it when Martin walked in. "What are you doing in here?" My heart rate didn't even spike. I'd passed the point of fear weeks ago. Evan asked me to review the reconciliation files. He left them open for me. Martin stared at me for a long moment. "You've been very cooperative lately." "I'm trying to adapt," I said simply. "You were right. I was too stuck in my ways." He nodded slowly, but something in his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "Just remember, Melissa, you're part of this team. What's good for the team is good for everyone." "Of course," I replied. "We're all in this together." The irony of that statement hung between us. We were all in this together, they just didn't know what this was about to become. The emergency board meeting was called for Monday at 10 o'clock sharp. The email from Richard's assistant used words like urgent compliance matter and mandatory attendance. I watched from my desk as Martin and Evan exchanged worried glances across the office, their usual swagger replaced with something that looked almost like fear. They had no idea what was coming, but I did. I'd made sure of it. The boardroom filled quickly. Richard sat at the head of the table, his face unreadable. The entire board was present, unusual for an unscheduled meeting. Patricia Williams from Thornton & Associates was there too. Looking distinctly uncomfortable, the company's legal counsel, David Park, sat with a yellow legal pad, pen poised.